seconds and counting. Team.
Hey, what's good, guys? It's Clutch here, Timmy here, back in another video. And for today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Houston Texans. I'm going to be doing a mock draft. Now, the mock draft that I do is going to be a 4-round. For the 7th round, we're probably going to do some later. But for now, I'm just going to do a 4-round mock draft for the Houston Texans. And the draft is going to be quickly approaching. I mean, the combine is already going to happen at the end of this month, I believe. So things are starting to ramp up. Free agency is going to start coming. So this offseason, by the time you know it, it's going to be the time for the draft. It's already going to be OTAs. It's going to be off-season workouts and all of that. So this offseason is going to fly by pretty much. I mean, especially when we don't have, I guess, that much to look forward to outside of free agency and the draft. I mean, the coaching hire, we already got that last year with D'Amico. There's not going to be as draining with the draft talk between do we take a quarterback, do we not take a quarterback, because we already have Stroud, so on and so forth. So yeah, let's just get straight into the mock draft. And the Houston Texans, their first pick is at selection 23 in the first round. Now, they did end up trading that other first-round pick that they had for the trade for Will Anderson, and I mean, I'm perfectly happy with that. I'm perfectly fine. You get yourself your franchise edge rusher, your franchise pass rusher, that leader of the locker room for the defense, so I'm perfectly fine with that. So our first and only selection in the first round is number 23. And number 23, I believe you can go a multitude of ways. You can either, I think you can draft receiver. I think you can go cornerback. I think he could go defensive lineman. There's 3 strong options that I think Houston can go with. But overall, I think depending on how the board goes, maybe if one of the receivers they really, really like fall to them, if that's the case, then I can see them definitely taking a receiver. But right now, I think their plan and their idea is probably to take the best interior or maybe even all-round defensive lineman. Maybe there's a good edge there. Maybe there's like a Chop Robinson there. Maybe they decide to go with him. Obviously, it depends on what they do with Jonathan Grenard. But in this scenario, I'm going to pretend we end up extending Jonathan Grenard. I'm going to pretend that we give him a contract. I'm going to pretend he's still on the Houston Texans. He's still lined up alongside Will Anderson. And now we're just looking for our defensive tackle. Let's pretend Sheldon Rankins, he ended up walking in free agency. He ended up going somewhere where he could get some more money and whatever. So we're really going to be in the market for a defensive tackle. Maybe we sign one of the premier ones in free agency. Maybe we sign a Mbarabuke. Maybe we sign who else is out there? There's going to be a lot of defensive tackles, mid-range, high-end, some low-end, cheaper ones. There's going to be a lot of talent in free agency as far as defensive tackle goes. So I'm sure we'll sign one there. But then I can also very well see us drafting a guy like Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy, defensive tackle, more like a defensive lineman. He can line up nose tackle. He's a little bit of a smaller guy. I don't want to say smaller guy, but maybe he's not as big to line up as nose tackle for sure. But he can definitely line up in the D-tackle position like a 3-tech, be that interior presence to maybe pass rush from there. It's going to be kind of, I don't want to say hard because he is a little bit smaller. I mean, he's not the biggest of guys. What is he? I think he's 6'1". Now, he does have some good weight on him. He's 308 pounds, 310, around there. But he is 6'1", so he's not that big of a guy. Maybe if he was like a little bit, like a 6'3", 6'4", had a little bit of more height on him, you could feel comfortable just putting him at nose, maybe. But for me, I think he's more of a 3-tech. Now, I think he's going to come into the league as a really good run stuffer. That's what a lot of people are saying. That's what shows on tape and so on. But this past season, he did only have 5 sacks. But, I mean, I don't want to say only. Because 5 sacks is an interior presence. That's pretty good. Especially when his main game isn't being a pass rusher. His main game is being a run stuffer. And that's kind of what we need. Defensive tackle position, say we sign a guy, a mid-tier defensive tackle, a guy that's just going to help be a body, a rotational guy. Then we definitely do need to get a guy who we can see as being a long-term starter, who we can mold and develop into being the premier guy on the interior for us. And I think Byron Murphy can definitely be that. He's more of a run stuffer, as I mentioned. Pass rushing, he's going to have to get a little bit better at that. But he did have 5 sacks, so I mean, there's some good promise. There's some hope. He had 29 total tackles last year for Texas. As far as TFL goes, I'm not sure. It's not showing for me right now. But I'm sure he had like maybe around 6 or 7, considering he's a run stuffer. He probably has somewhere around that range as far as tackle for losses. Or actually, it's right here. He had 8.5 tackle for losses. So that's really, really good. Almost 9 TFLs, 29 total tackles in 14 games. So in only 14 games, 29 total tackles. So that's about what? 2 tackles a game, 8.5 tackle for loss, and 5 total sacks. So yeah, they was pretty productive. I mean, one of the more productive interior defensive linemen in this draft. The other probably being Jason Newton. He ended up going a little bit higher in this particular mock draft that I did. So yeah, 23, Byron Murphy. Now at 59, there's a strong chance that this player isn't going to be there. There's a chance that it goes a little bit higher. I'm not sure who else will really be in the market for him. But he is a little bit of a smaller guy. But he is, I mean, I don't want to say smaller. I guess just his frame. His frame isn't the biggest. He's 6'1". He's kind of on the lighter side. I think he's around 175, something like that. It's a little bit bigger than Tank, but not too much bigger. But this guy is Xavier Worthy, wide receiver out of Texas. And yes, I know, I'm double dipping on Texas players. So if you're a Texas hater, like if you're a Baylor fan, Texas A&M fan, or something like that, you're probably not going to like this mock draft. But in my opinion, I think this is a very good first 2 picks. We get your defensive tackle and Byron Murphy, and then you get a premier receiver for C.J. Stroud and Bobby Slowick to play around with, and it's Xavier Worthy. He's still 20. He's going to be 21 by the start of next season, so very, very young. I feel like he can line up inside and outside, but if we were to draft him, I would prefer we play him inside with Tank being outside. Yes, a lot of y'all are probably going to say, oh, Tank needs to be inside. He's smaller. He needs to be in the slot. But that's just simply not the case. He lined up more times outside than when he lined up inside for the Houston Texans last year. And he did that also in college. He was more of an outside presence than anything. Yes, he can line up in the slot. But statistically, I forgot who put it out. I think Cody Johnson on Twitter. He put out, I think it was him. He put out a thread or something on why Tank Dell needs to stay on the outside. And, I mean, there were some pretty valuable stats in there, pretty valuable statistics in there on why and how Tank Dell produces better from the outside than what he does in the slot. And it does come to a little bit of a surprise because when you look at Tank Dell's size and weight and all of that and the way he plays, you would think he plays better in the slot, right? But that's just simply not the case. So you put Xavier Worthy in the slot with his speed. He's probably going to end up running a 4.3, I think. And if not, a very, very low 4.4. Or like a 4.41 or something like that. Or a 4.4 flat. But I think he's going to run like a 4.37, 4.36, something around that. But yeah, he's very fast, very agile. One thing to worry about is his frame. His frame, he's a pretty smaller guy. I mean, he's not the biggest. Tank Dell has a better frame than him, in my opinion. And then another concern is his drops. He did have a little bit of a concern with the drop history 2 years ago. He kind of cleaned it up a little bit this past season, but he did still have a little bit of a concentration drop issue. But I feel like it's something he can control. It's something he can work on, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. So I think Xavier Worthy, he would bring a whole new dimension to this offense. He can really be that true burner, that true deep threat. Just letting C.J. Stroud unleash the deep ball, just let his arm rip. I think Xavier Worthy would really, really help complement that. Now, again, as I mentioned, there is a chance he is taken higher than 59. But when you look at the wide receiver class, it's a lot of guys, especially in that first round. There's some fringe first and second round guys. There's BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr., there's Odunze, there's Troy Franklin. There's a bunch of different guys that could be in that late to first, early second, maybe take a little bit of a fall type of thing. There's a lot of receivers, so I could definitely see Xavier Worthy possibly being there, but then there's also a world where he's not. But if he is, at 59, I'm definitely running the card up there for Xavier Worthy. I mean, I don't think there's much better value than you can get at 59 than a receiver, than a difference maker like Xavier Worthy. When you talk about difference makers, Xavier Worthy can definitely be that guy with the speed, with the run after the catch. I think he's Tank, but a little bit faster and a little bit taller. Tank Dell, I mean, they do have similar skill sets, similar games, but I think Worthy is a better deep threat, a natural deep threat than him, a better natural deep route runner than Tank Dell. So there's that. Tank Dell's more the intermediate, crafty route runner / just get the ball in his hands, he can make magic. And Xavier Worthy is that deep route runner with just getting the ball in his hands deep. And I think that would be a really good compliment for Nico. Nico's that more physical, that taller, that bigger guy, that bigger presence at 6'4". But yeah, so at 59, I had Xavier Worthy. And at 86, I took Jeremiah Trotter Jr. And there also is a chance that this specific player ends up going maybe a little bit earlier in the third, or maybe even tests out phenomenally and ends up going in the second somehow. But Jeremiah Trotter Jr., there is a lot of linebackers in this draft. Some very good ones, some not. We got not Jeremiah. We got Edger. I can't pronounce the name. Cooper from Texas A&M. He's probably gonna end up being one of the first few linebackers taken. So he's probably gonna go late first, early second, mid second, somewhere around there. Jeremiah Trotter, he's probably like linebacker 4, I think. At best, I could see him being linebacker 3. At worst, I could see him being linebacker 4. But Jeremiah Trotter, it gives D'Amico Ryans another weapon to have at linebacker. Now, when you look at him, he's pretty good size. I mean, 6 foot, 230 pounds. Not the tallest of guys, but he can still get the job done. Now, where exactly would he be at linebacker for us? Ideally, he would be your Denzel Perryman replacement. Have him lining up with Christian Harris when you run like a 4-2-5 defense. When you have 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and then, of course, 5 DBs. I think that would be a pretty good formation for him. Have him next to Christian Harris. Now, he is pretty raw, but he is pretty young still. He's only 21. He doesn't turn 22 until the end of next season, pretty much, on Christmas Eve. So, very young guy, very talented, but again, very raw. Now, he doesn't seem like the most athletic guy. I mean, just from watching a few clips from him, he does have some pretty good speed. Now, athletic-wise, as I mentioned, I don't think he's the most athletic, but he does have some pretty good athleticism for the way he plays. He looks like a more traditional linebacker. Let's see. He has good sideline and sideline range, so that's very good, similar to Christian Harris. Good blitzer. He can really help in the run game. He does have that hit power. 6 foot, 230-ish pounds. Yeah, I would be happy with the pick. I mean, I don't think there's many other guys better at number 86 that you can take than a guy like him. I don't want to say developmental, but I definitely do think he's raw. D'Amico Ryans and co. would really have to work on him a little bit. I do think it could be a day 1 starter, especially depending on what we do with Denzel Perryman. I mean, we're still going to have a linebacker hole. We do have Henry To'oTo'o, but I don't think he's going to start. We still have, that's pretty much it. Especially if we don't really sign Blake Cashman. That's going to be a huge problem right there. We're going to have a bunch of linebacker holes right there. But I think Jeremiah Trotter can definitely fill in those holes. Now, next, at 124, I took Audric Estime. And this is assuming that we don't go out and sign a Saquon Barkley in free agency or any guy like that. Let's assume we re-sign Devin Singletary. And then we end up drafting a guy like Audric Estime in the draft. Now, Estime, he's slowly becoming one of my favorite backs. It's either him or I really like Bucky Irving as well. But Bucky Irving is more of a smaller guy. I don't think he could be a 3-down back. At least in my opinion. I think it's more of that 3rd down / like a Jahmyr Gibbs type. Like, he can't be an every down back. He can't take the workload. But Audric Estime, I think he definitely has the talent and the potential to do that. He's 5'11", 230 pounds, and he's all of that 230. I mean, he's absolutely built. He has a bunch of muscle on him, very strong, can run through contact, can avoid contact, can make people miss, run through guys. He has pretty good hands. Now, for his size and for his play style, you wouldn't think that he has the best of hands. He can't catch that good. When you actually watch him, I mean, he's pretty good. He has some solid hands. But yeah, back to it. He's a very big guy. I mean, he can run through anybody, really. I really, really like his game. He would really be a good compliment for Devin Singletary. If you have a running back room of Audric Estime, Devin Singletary, and then Dameon Pierce, I think that's a very good running back room. Very talented, very diverse skill sets. I would really, really fall in love with that running back room. I think that's a great pick at 124. There's a chance he ends up going higher than that, obviously, as there always is. But if he's there, I'm definitely running that card up too. And now with their next pick, only 4 picks later at 128, I'm taking James Williams. Now, he was predicted a little bit as a reach right there on the specific website that I was using. But I kind of like James Williams. I've seen a little bit about him. He's probably a top 5 safety in this class. And as we know, safety is a pretty big need for us, especially if we don't bring back Jimmy Ward, if we cut him, or even if we do bring him back. I mean, Jimmy Ward is an older guy, was hurt a lot of last year. You really can't rely on him to be a starter. And Jalen Petrie, I mean, he had his struggles. He had his problems and issues. So there's that. But James Williams, 21, he's 6'5", 215 pounds. Very big guy, very big for the safety position. For context, I think Kyle Hamilton is like 6'4", and James Williams is 6'5", so he's an inch bigger than what Kyle Hamilton is. Very big guy. He's very raw as well. He was a 4-star recruit. At that point, I think he's just a guy that you try to bring in, try to coach up. I think he definitely could start day one as well, because we don't really have too many safeties, and I mean the safeties that we do have, they're not anything crazy. I think we could possibly move Jalen Petrie into the slot, so that would definitely make a safety position open for us. So yeah, James Williams at number 128. I think I would really be happy there. Now, this draft, I really, really love the draft that I did. I mean, I got starters, I got talent, I got playmakers on offense, playmakers on defense. I'm really happy with the way this draft panned out for me. At 23, I'm just going to do a quick breakdown, like a quick review. At 23, Byron Murphy. 59, Xavier Worthy. 86, Jeremiah Trotter. 124, Audric Estime. 128, James Williams. Now, if we were to have a similar draft to that, I think I would be very, very happy. Again, you add talent on both sides of the ball. You get yourselves, hopefully, your franchise defensive tackle. You get yourselves, hopefully, your slot wide receiver of the future, your game breaker, your game changer in terms of the deep threat ability. And then at number 86, you get yourself your linebacker who D'Amico Ryans can really put his hands all over, pause. Hopefully, I don't want to say he can play that Fred Warner role because obviously Fred Warner is one of a kind. He's the best linebacker in football. But hopefully he can have a similar role in the sense of the duties that he's responsible for, that he carries. But yeah, 124, hopefully I get the running back of the future, the starter of the future, the young guy, in Audric Estime. And then at 128, I mean, you're just reaching for the stars at this point, trying to get players that can come on and make an impact, hopefully be a starter. And that took James Williams to do just that. Safety, 6'5", big body guy. Let's hope he can transition to the NFL pretty good because we would definitely need it at that point with Jimmy Ward either being cut or just not being the same, and then Jalen Petrie not being the same, possibly being moved to the slot. But yeah, I mean, what do y'all guys think about that draft? I would personally love it. But yeah, it's been Clutch Eater Entertainment, and hope you guys have a good day. Peace.